Hi, my name is Josh, and I'm a professional delivery captain, sailing instructor, and yacht and small craft surveyor. In today's video, we're going to discuss the latest developments, new findings, and why it is we're making the videos following this particular incident. So, why is it that I make these videos? Well, let me tell you a little bit more about who I am. I have a background in law enforcement training and corporate security, contract security. So I was taught how to perform crime scene investigations and later performed many investigations of security incidents in both a public and corporate settings. Many of those incidents and investigations were of a critical nature, particularly when I managed the contract security services in 5 acute care hospitals. Because of this background, I'm naturally inclined to ask questions, evaluate evidence, make preliminary findings, and ultimately produce a report with actionable outcomes. This is why I think I was drawn to the profession of yacht surveying, because I get to the opportunity to inspect the myriad ways in which systems are installed on vessels, both good and very, very bad. I get to learn something new from every time I do a survey. I also get to draw on my existing knowledge of standards and best practices, and I produce reports and ultimately make recommendations based on those findings. So you can see how investigating or researching these kind of incidences, I'm not investigating, but researching and providing insights on these kind of incidences is a very similar logic process. So we've been seeing in the comments section some frustrations that have been expressed at the so-called speculating that folks are doing when it comes to this incident. And comments like, why don't you just wait until the authorities complete the investigation and release their official report? The answer is that due to my background, I will have some insights that may help shed some light on the subject. And that there are things that we have learned and can be applied now based on what we've already been able to analyze. It's also an opportunity to learn about the systems and protocols that apply in this case. And just like I learn from every survey I conduct, I also learn a tremendous amount from the research that I do in incidents like this one, aircraft incidents and maritime incidences. And there's an opportunity to share those lessons with an audience like yourselves. Because the best teachers are even better students. There are many people out there with more direct knowledge of large ship systems, more miles at sea, etc. And some of those folks, frankly, show up in the comments sections. Some of them, unfortunately, with some very negative commentary and personal attacks and this kind of thing. It doesn't faze me because I know the difference between us isn't just whether somebody has more experience in the industry. Let's face it, I showed up on this planet many, many years after folks had sailed all around the world and discovered everything there is. So I'm unconcerned that I'm not the saltiest person that ever walked. The difference between me and those types of folks is that I'm a better teacher because I'm a better student. I know that I don't know it all, and I'm willing to admit my mistakes, and I'm also happy to learn from the process. Which brings me to my next point. I've got some things wrong, and that's okay because it's a process of discovery and sharing. My initial video, the first of what is now going to be 3 on this incident, was to address the general public that had some very clear misconceptions due to a lack of understanding of the maritime industry, shipping maneuvers, these kind of things. And the point of that video was to try and highlight some information to that audience, the audience of folks that aren't in the industry and who didn't understand that, hey, the ship isn't trying to go under the bridge. They know that it's not going to fit under the bridge. So that was the intention of the first video. The second video was about answering some of the prevailing questions, like how does a ship get stuck in reverse and why didn't they drop the anchor? And I hope that that video was successful in providing some information that would help illuminate those subjects, again, for folks that don't have a deep knowledge in vessel operations or ship operations. And that brings us to this video, which is to update you on the latest information, the things that we got wrong in the initial video, and why that is all okay. So that brings us to the first correction, and that is the tugboat. So in the initial video, I suggested that the tugboat would not have been successful in stopping the inertia, the force of the Huatamak. And that's incorrect. But the reason I suggested that was in the initial videos and with the information that was available at the time, the narrative and the speculation at the time was that the vessel lost power and was being carried in a very rapid current towards the Brooklyn Bridge. And suggestions that the boat was at the time potentially doing 5 knots or so, going backwards with the current, heading towards the bridge. So, and you'll see in the initial video, I provided a clip showing a tugboat clearly struggling in, with a large load, large tow, and very severe current. So the latest information is in fact that the Huatamak left the pier at about 8:20, and that was at or just after slack tide. And you'll see from the information that I'm putting on screen that the current running at that time was about 0.2 to 0.3 knots. We know that because tide current tables are very accurate. So my initial thoughts were that the tug had no chance trying to stop the mass of the Huatamak in a current. So all the inertia of the weight of the vessel moving in a 5 or 6 knot current was what we thought at the time, what I thought, which was incorrect. That even if it was able to get around and behind the ship, there's no way it would have success, because picture this. Imagine somebody's walking down a treadmill, the airport treadmills, and you have somebody walking down the treadmill and you're walking against it. You're barely able to keep up with the treadmill. Now imagine somebody's coming down, walking towards you, and you're trying to stop them, push them, while also pushing against the direction of the treadmill. That's what I had imagined or envisioned with a tugboat trying to stop a large ship while everyone is moving in the current at the same time. So that was why I initially thought, well, even if it could get around and get behind it, they're both stuck on the same treadmill, and it's got to force its own weight against the current and the force of the ship coming against it. So that's the initial thinking for that. Knowing what we know now, that the Huatamak was moving in reverse due to its own propulsion, I now know better that the tugboat Charles D. McAllister was powerful enough to arrest the travel of the Huatamak. However, the tug was not successful in being able to overtake the ship once they had realized that the Huatamak was, in fact, accelerating in reverse. Once disconnected from the ship, after assisting the Huatamak off of the pier, I just believe it's Pier 17. So the Charles B. McAllister was attached at the starboard aft hip of the boat. And you'll see from the channel What's Up With Shipping, who does a really great breakdown on the whole incident. And I encourage you to go back to that channel and watch his analysis on the events. Very thorough. He describes, and you'll see in the video that I'll put up behind, that the Huatamak has a tarpon that's run over the top side of the stern quarter of the ship, so that where the Charles B. McAllister tug makes contact with the hull, it doesn't scuff up the hull. And this is all explained on his video. Sorry, that's the channel What's Going On With Shipping, which you can see playing behind me here. as I was saying, the Charles B. McAllister is positioned at the starboard stern quarter, and they begin this maneuver of backing out of the pier. And it is at this point where the tugboat disconnects from the Huatamak and moves to a position to push on the bow to complete the turn, pointing the boat back out the river to the west. So it is at this point where the Huatamak begins accelerating in reverse away from the tug, and the Charles B. McAllister is in this realization. There must have been, some delay, but they would have had this moment of realization that the ship is accelerating and continuing in reverse, which is not the plan. And you'll see that the tug turns and tries to race to overtake and get in a position where they can attempt to arrest the travel of the Huatamak. So there was some initial speculation or questions around whether or why not the Charles D. McAllister was attached to the Huatamak. And it was in fact attached at the initial part of the maneuver, does disconnect to move to a bow position, and that's where the Huatamak begins to accelerate out of the range of the Charles D. McAllister. We were partly correct with our estimation of the type of remote controls for controlling the transmission. It now appears that a variable pitch propeller system appears to be fitted in the Huatamak. And so what I'm going to do is throw it to this video clip that describes in more detail about that type of propulsion system.
Massive ships are powered by massive propellers. Likewise, small boats are powered by small propellers, but the principles are the same. One propeller is the controllable or variable pitch propeller, but how exactly does it work? This vessel is the Hermes. She's an old design deep sea salvage tug fitted with 2 propellers. I don't know what her original propulsion was, but I can use her for this demonstration and give her 1 controllable pitch propeller and 1 fixed pitch propeller. When they're spinning away like this, it's hard to see anything much, so let's slow it down and look at the controllable pitch. Like this, she's running ahead. The propeller blade is cutting the water and propelling it backwards. This is no different to a fixed propeller. When running ahead, they look exactly the same. The difference comes when we want to reduce the speed. To reduce the speed of a fixed propeller, you have to slow the rotation. Very easy if you've either got a gearbox or an engine that can easily vary its speed, but it's a bit harder when your engine likes to run at a constant speed. A controllable pitch propeller, on the other hand, runs at a constant rotational speed. To reduce the vessel's speed, you change the angle of attack of each blade instead. It's hard to see while rotating, so let's stop it and have a closer look. Running ahead, you can see it's got a steep angle of attack. This makes it harder to turn, but generates more thrust. As you reduce the angle of attack, the engine has an easier time turning the propeller, but it generates less thrust, slowing the vessel. You can generate zero thrust by setting the pitch to 0. For example, this setting would be used when a ship has started her engines but is still alongside her berth, not yet wanting to move. By contrast, to set a fixed pitch propeller to generate zero thrust, you literally stop it. For a stern propulsion, a fixed pitch propeller needs to turn in the opposite direction. Ships do this either through a gearbox arrangement or sometimes by literally stopping the engine and restarting it in the other direction. The controllable pitch propeller just needs to alter its pitch to be pointing the other way. If we stop it again, you can see the alteration becomes a lot clearer. The shallow angle generates lesser stern thrust, but you can increase it by altering the blades even further. One thing to just compare quickly is the path that the water is directed down. Going astern, you can see the shape of the blade is less efficient than it was when going ahead. This is why ships' astern power is sometimes up to 50% less than for the same pitch ahead. Fixed pitch propellers, on the other hand, don't suffer quite as badly, as they are effectively always at their maximum pitch setting. The main takeaway point is that a controllable pitch propeller is constantly spinning. It's constantly generating a bit of water flow at the stern of the vessel. When handling a vessel at slow speed, that's enough to actually start a turn and throw you out of position. We call this effect transverse thrust, or propeller work, but that is a topic for another video.
So this next clip goes into more detail about how these systems fail, the particular ways in which they can fail, and what the expected outcome is when they do fail. The question that should be asked with respect to a CPP system is, what is the failure default position of the blade pitch if the control signal is lost? This could occur from an air, electrical, or hydraulic failure caused, for example, by a generator failure or blackout. There are some systems in operation where, if the control signal is lost, the failure default position is either full ahead, full astern, or remaining in its current position. The risk of the ship and the surrounding environment is therefore obvious if the failure takes place during a maneuvering operation. A number of CPP failures have occurred when the ship was maneuvering off the berth. The CPP reverts to a default position, ahead, astern, or in the last known position, or defaults possibly to zero pitch. Ideally, a CPP failure position would be zero blade pitch, no thrust. However, all systems are at risk if, for example, a solenoid valve sticks in either the head or stern position during critical operations. A ship's master and officer should always be aware of the failure position of the CPP system in use on board, and notices to this effect should be clearly displayed. And finally, I wanted to actually include a clip from what's going on in Shipping's channel that provides the evidence. He's done some good digging to find some evidence from actually a vessel tour that shows the type of controls in the bridge. That is evidence of the fact that it is this variable pitch propeller system. So we'll throw back to the video so you can see for yourself.
Now, the problem I had was to determine whether or not this ship had a controllable pitch propeller, because I had talked to a pilot who actually had piloted this ship in and could not remember if it had it, could not find information from the builder's site, from the Mexican Navy site. It was just kind of impossible to find. That is until I found this video on the internet, on YouTube specifically, of a tour on board the ship in 2017, which featured the bridge of the vessel, the controls for the controllable pitch propeller, and that's it right there. So I was able to get some friend of mine, another pilot, to look at this. This is a Berg control system for a controllable pitch prop, and so this handle right here is what you use. So this is your throttle right here. It'll show you the RPMs, what RPMs your propeller is spinning at. And then by pushing forward, pulling back, that changes the pitch of your propeller. And so if you want to go forward, push forward into the green, you're going to go forward. If you want to go back, you pull back, you stop. This also has a backup system. Now, I am not familiar with this specific unit. I've been trying to pull the specs on it, but this is an older unit, and I haven't been able to pull specs on it. But if for some reason there was a failure in this unit, or the unit was not used properly, when they push forward on this to get their forward speed, if however this was engaged to use the propellers backwards, or there's a short, mechanical, who knows, all we know is that instead of propelling them forward, it propelled them backwards.
As tragic as this incident is, I hope you're learning something from these videos, and something positive will come out from this, from an increased understanding of these events. So again, thank you for watching, and visit our website at www.learntosailmexico.com to get 2 free sailing courses, and let's continue learning together. Thanks again.